Welcome back. A couple weeks ago, I had a fun conversation with the traveling baseball babes, talking about their friendship and ballpark touring hobby. I got to hear all about how their adventures began and a little bit about some of their favorite stadiums. Today, we are continuing that topic with two new guests. I am Grayson Knight, and this is Baseball Podcasts Are Fun. I am joined by Graham Knight, no relation, who has toured almost every professional baseball stadium in the country, from the minor leagues to the majors and some independent league parks too. Graham has seen and written about so many ballparks. He also runs a website, baseballpilgrimages.com, where he writes about his stadium travels. My other guest is my dad, who's been to 35 ballparks and has written a few ballpark reviews for Graham. We're going to keep this interview loose, so let's go. Graham, thank you for being here. Please tell us a little bit about your background with baseball and how your stadium hobby started.
Well, Grayson, thank you for having me. I've known your dad for a while, so it's good to see him in person, even though we're not far away. It's hard to get together now that we're so heavily involved in youth baseball. So taking on a different passion in baseball. How I got started with going to stadiums. I was thinking about that because I don't remember particularly there being one point in time where I thought this is what I want to do. I want to see so many stadiums. I guess I would trace it back to about being your age 13, 14. My parents took me and my brothers after we moved to Georgia from Pennsylvania on a spring training trip down to Winter Haven, Florida, where the Red Sox used to train. And we went to a few different stadiums while we were down there for spring training. And I would say it probably took root then, but it wasn't until a decade later when I was old enough on my own and had money and time that I could do what I wanted to do. And I realized as much as I love baseball, I was more fascinated by the stadiums than I was, the particular game. I'm been a Red Sox fan all my life. And originally it was just to go see the Red Sox play in every major league stadium. And that's hard to do because they've only played at Wrigley Field like twice in the past 100 years. I wasn't going to wait for them to play at Wrigley in 2029 or whatever to go see them. So at some point in time, I just decided I wanted to see every stadium, regardless of who was playing there. And the minor league aspect came into it just because there were minor league parks near us in the metro Atlanta area. And I went to one in Augusta in 2001. And that was really the first time I ever thought, these are neat too. They're different. And I enjoy that just as much as the major league stadium. So it took off from there. And I've been able to see games in over 200 ballparks at the professional level. Been to quite a few more in which there was no game on that particular day. So I've seen probably close to 300 ballparks since I started keeping track in 2001. Not as much the past few years, of course, with COVID and then my kids playing baseball. I don't have as much free time as I used to, but I just love stadiums. That's my, your podcast is Baseball is Fun, and going to ballparks is even the most fun part of baseball for me the last 15 years.
So what made you start your website?
That was kind of what I had worked on when I was in college, is working, the internet was just kind of getting started with e-commerce and stuff like that. And I graduated in 1999 from the University of Georgia. I had a telecommunications journalism degree, and I started working out, building, maintaining, writing for major websites, the news media. So I had, Detroit, Boston, 5 Atlanta, some of those. And I worked for a company in Dunwoody, Georgia, and that's what we did. So I had done that for a year. And once you can do it for, $1 billion company, you figure you can do it for yourself. There's no reason that I can't do it because I could write code. And nowadays with WordPress and many other ways to do your own website, that didn't exist 20 years ago. So that barrier to entry was removed for me. And because I could do that, and I already had a journalism background, it just kind of started from there. I would do it in my free time, just kind of after when I got home from work. It was something to do. And I wanted people to read what I wrote. And really it was a way for me to chronicle what was going on. This is, I don't feel that old, but I know we are in terms of the internet age. There was no blog software back in 2001. So if you wanted what you wrote to be read, you had to find a way to get it on Yahoo or something like that, or start your own website. So that's how that started.
Have you written a review for every ballpark you've been to?
Not every one. I mean, I've taken thousands of photos and gathered a lot of information, done a lot of research, but it takes a long time to really write those in-depth articles. Mm-hmm. And people, I realized I worked for somebody once that told me people don't read, they scan. If you write a 10-page article, it's going to be hard to get through all of that. And about a decade ago, I realized that, ballparks change about 5% every year. So over the span of a decade or 10 years, whatever you wrote 10 years ago is going to be, materially or, factually incorrect. So I started writing smaller and smaller bits and pieces, and not the huge reviews. So I haven't even written a review or written up, Truist Park or SunTrust Park when it opened. It's certainly on the website, but I haven't written any information about it. So it's hard to, constantly rewrite things. And I've done that before. I've rewritten, entire articles, but it was taking a lot of time and it started to feel like work. And so I wanted to see as many as I could. And to write a good major league article would take about a week. So I have not written up every one, but I've certainly taken photos. At a minimum, I've written something about it on Facebook, on the Baseball Pilgrimages Facebook page. But on the website, not everyone has an article that goes with it.
Mm-hmm. So one of you can go, but how did you two meet? Who wants to answer that?
Oh, do you remember?
I was trying to think about that. I want to say, and I don't know how we contacted each other. Dad wrote some articles for me, and we met up for lunch in Vegas. Does that sound right? When you were living there?
We met up. I think the first time we met when we were living in Tampa. Actually, you were down. I know you were down for. You were going to a couple spring training games, and you had just come from Clearwater because you had seen a Phillies game. But we had been communicating before that. It must have been.
Well, we definitely went to Capoga's dugout.
Yeah,
that's the only time I was ever been there was with you.
Yeah, but
I don't know if that was before.
You know what it was?
After.
Okay. So I had, like Graham, I was very interested in seeing as many ballparks as I could. And I started kind of doing my own research. And every time I would go to ballparks, I would take my notebook and I would start writing stuff. And I was just kind of looking for different ideas about things to like pay attention to. And I came across your website and I think I just reached out to you. That must have been it, because I remember when we did meet in Tampa, we were just talking about like kind of the little things that we found, that like the little gems that a lot of people don't know about ballparks. So I think it must have been, I probably reached out to you.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of people that really do study ballparks, notice all the different little quirks and what makes each one so different. So it's not like going to a football game or a basketball game where the places where they play are basically the same. And then you start to realize other people think the same way, and it is a whole community out there, the people that are really passionate about ballparks. So.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of other like sports fields, how do you think baseball ballparks differ from other sports fields?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy question to answer because the dimensions of the playing field are not set in stone as they are football and basketball and hockey. So the structures that surround the field can be different because the outfield doesn't have to be the same dimension. Mm-hmm. There's no constraints because of the playing field. So you can think about all the places that you played, your youth tournaments and things like that. I've seen the same thing with my kids that, all the fields are different. The stadiums or seating arrangements are different. So they don't have to be the same. Now they were when I was a kid, when I was your age. I lived in Pittsburgh and we went to games at Three River Stadium. We moved down here going to see games in Atlanta, Fulton County Stadium. Those were exactly the same. Those multi-purpose football, baseball, concrete donuts, as that you didn't know where you were when you were inside them. They were all the same. And that's not really, that might be fine for football, but it wasn't what people wanted from a baseball standpoint. And then once the world saw, Camden Yards, when it opened in Baltimore in 1992, that opened up the possibilities to actually have creative, true ballpark design, not a stadium, but an actual ballpark. So because the playing field's different, and that's probably the biggest reason they can make them look different. They have all kinds of ballparks are pretty similar between the foul poles and, and the grandstands, but everything in the outfield is what sets a ballpark apart. Its design, how it looks, what's in the outfield. It allows, now that ballparks aren't enclosed anymore. I think Toronto is the only one that's still fully enclosed.
And
you can, and the Trop. There's nothing to see. There's not much to see outside the Trop.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Skyway if you look to your right, but no, I mean, now you can see what's around stadiums. Three River Stadium is three rivers that came right up to the exterior of the stadium, but you would never know from being in the stadium. So that's probably my favorite thing of a ballpark, and what sets it apart is its location and its setting. And I've always liked downtown ballparks, and anything that's around the water. So before, 30 years ago, you could have a downtown ballpark by the water and not know you're downtown and not know you're next to the water.
Did my dad ask you if he could write some reviews for your website, or did you ask him?
I don't fully remember, and that email account that I would have been using all those years ago, I don't have access to. I know that I used to put on my website, if you like to write a review for this ballpark, get in touch with me, and a few people did, including probably your dad. So I'm assuming he got in touch with me. I don't really remember. This is before Facebook, so it wasn't like that was an easy way to reach out back then. So I want to say he was writing for another website some way, somehow. Do you remember what the other one? You could post your own.
Yeah, actually, thank you. So there was like a blog. It was like an open blog page where anyone can have their blog. It was called Hub Pages. And so I had like my own blog where I would write stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I wrote about was baseball. And that's right. Okay. So, and
is that still around? You think Hub Pages still exist?
I have no idea. I kind of stopped writing once, Grayson came along, which, I remember I wrote a lot of things kind of gearing up to becoming a first-time dad, and then I stopped. Maybe that's, it should have made me write more, but I stopped.
So Graham, can you take us through some American League ballparks? Which are must-sees and which are some you can skip?
Well, the must-sees, I'm a Red Sox fan, so I'm biased, but Fenway, just because it's been around so long and it's so unique and quaint. It is not big, and I know that you've been there before, and that's on most people's bucket list, right? Fenway and Wrigley. That's just kind of a give me. So I think the next best ballpark in the American League, I'd say Kauffman Stadium. I've always loved Kauffman Stadium, and you can walk out now amongst the waterfalls in Kansas City. So being able to do that, I think, is awesome. So I've always enjoyed going to the Royal Stadium. You could probably miss Oakland. That's not a great place to watch a game. I have nothing against Tropicana Field. I mean, it's air conditioned. It's got the touch tank in the outfield. I mean, there's things to do there. So it's essentially a place you go just to watch the game and don't walk around. And I do like to walk around a lot, but I have nothing against Tropicana Field. But I'll go to Kauffman Stadium in the American League after Fenway Park. Then Oakland's not that great. I'm not a huge fan of Detroit, no particular reason. I'm just, Anaheim, I don't think is that great, but it's really kind of what you like. Anaheim is in a parking lot, not really close to, obviously Los Angeles is close, but there's not much to see beyond the ballpark except for the arena where the NHL team plays across the street. So again, I really like backdrops and settings, and Anaheim's not good in that regard. But Kansas City has the waterfalls in the outfield, and that's one of the most unique features anywhere at any stadium. I think it's the largest private waterfall display in the entire world. So the fact that you can walk out there, you couldn't do that before the ballpark was renovated about 2009. But the fact that you can walk out there in the outfield, that's a vantage point that you're not going to get anywhere else.
That's still one. I have 4 left, and that's still one that I've been wanting to get actually since one of our first conversations when you were telling me, it had this renovation. It's definitely a place that you got to visit, but not only because I want to check it off, but I do want to see it in general. But you mentioned it earlier, but not just now, Camden Yards. I mean, it was the ballpark. It was that retro new wave of ballparks that came in, 92. And then it was, everything wanted to be like that. Let's open up the concourses. Let's integrate the community as much as we can, because you're in Baltimore, you're 3 blocks from downtown Inner Harbor. And then after that, I think the Jake was the next one of those, maybe.
It was, yeah, in 94, and then Coors Field in 95. And for quite a while, Coors Field has been the 3rd oldest ballpark in the National League. And Coors Field opened in 1995 in the strike shortened season. So But yeah, let's build a downtown. Let's open concourses. Let's give people views. Of course, Baltimore has the B&O warehouse, which is just a great focal point to fixate on from the stands. So,
but from number one though is in American League though, for me, it's gonna be all day long. It's gonna be Fenway from the historical perspective, from the tremendous fan base, the knowledge of the fan in Chicago, New York, Boston. You know, some of your old time, deeply rooted baseball historians, you know, where baseball is passed down from generation to generation like a family heirloom.
Yes.
There's nothing like seeing a ball game in the backyard of someone who really appreciates the game. And Fenway is just tops. And being able to take my own son there last year, we saw 2 games against the Jays, and to experience that with him and seeing it through his eyes, was awesome.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, we were down in Jupiter, Florida. My 13-year-old is a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. And normally we can't go to spring training. They can't because spring training, you know, their breaks, their midwinter break and their spring break bookends when spring training starts at end. We can't go down there. The only good thing of the lockout this year was that it pushed back spring training 1 week. And so we were able to get down for the last 3 days, and we did 2 games in Jupiter, and we literally sat, you know, basically in the Cardinals bullpen because there's the premium seats down the right field line right behind there. And so we got to talk to players literally the entire game.
That's awesome.
I mean, you're sitting directly behind them. You can reach out and touch them if you want to. So that was so cool. Because like what your dad's saying, you know, at some point in time, you've been to enough places. It's a lot more fun taking your kids and you guys get to experience all that. And then we have a little bit of knowledge, right? So we kind of know where to go and what to do, which I think makes it better for, you know, for you and, you know, Zachary's my son and Walker, the other one. So they've been fortunate with doing certain things in baseball and touring stadiums and be on the field a lot. So that's what I enjoy a lot more now is taking them to games because I've been fortunate enough to be everywhere. I like to go back certain places because so many ballparks have changed so much since I was there the first or second time. But yeah, Fenway would not be an easy one to take my kids to. Boston's not an easy place to get to. It's certainly an expensive city. So somewhere along the line, I like to do that. But to get my oldest son down to spring training and to see the Cardinals and all of his favorite players just right up close and in person and get to meet so many guys in the stadium, some of the guys outside the stadium, that was really awesome. So that's one thing. That's something that I remember for a long time. So that was when I started going to spring training. I was the same age. So that was a lot of fun. Gabe, which ballparks have you not been to besides Kansas City? So you're missing 4. So I'm curious.
I know 2 of them.
All right, tell Graham.
Globe Life Field, Rogers Center. Would you say Anaheim? No. What was the one that?
So Kaufman.
Yeah, Kaufman.
What's close to Kaufman? 3 hours away, just north. Red and white team.
Oh. Cincinnati.
No. Got the arch.
The arch.
The archway to the west. It's St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah. So
That's
I
cool, yeah.
never went to Old Busch Stadium or the second Busch Stadium. And I haven't been obviously to the
Globe Life Field.
Yeah. So those 4, but we're gonna check one off here in
July.
Yeah, first weekend in July, we're going up to Toronto before we have Grayson has his
Cooperstown
tournament the whole week, the whole first week of July. So we're going to drive to Toronto. We're going to see our Rays play up there. I think there might be a special gathering between Grayson and his buddy Brett Phillips, who he loves.
Yes, I saw that on a previous episode. That is awesome. So
and then we'll drive down to Cooperstown. But yeah, those 4. And obviously I was at the Rangers' old stadium, Ballpark of Arlington, which was just this massive stadium, and it had that mix of that old feel and also an open warehouse. And you would like look up into right field, and you're like, how do people hit home runs up here? Center field.
Yeah, I like that stadium, and from an exterior standpoint, I don't know.
Oh yeah,
ballpark in baseball. And,
yeah,
it had a lot of neat things in the ballpark itself. So I've not seen a game at the new Rangers ballpark. I was there during construction, so I've been to the site. You know, I saw it as they were building it, but I have not been to see a game there. So I need to get to back to 30 of 30. So the first time I made it to 30 of 30 Major League ballparks was 2007. And Petco Park was the one that did it for me. So could be St. Louis or Kansas City for you, but you can knock those out in the same trip.
Right. Yeah. That's why I did that with Cincinnati and Cleveland a couple of years ago. And I mean, if you go to New York and you're going to see a game, you're going to want to go when both teams are home. So we always looking at any type of travel, whether it's family or work related. Is baseball in season? Is it being played? Like, I'm actually taking a trip next week for work to Boston, and guess what? The Red Sox are not in town, and it's such a bummer.
They just had that long Patriots Day, opening weekend series where they're home for a while, and then they go on the road for a bit. So, we have done that before. My kids have seen a game in Cleveland, and it was the same thing. We were up there for a wedding. It was one of those things where we had certain events that day, the next day, and I didn't know when those events were going to end, if we could get to a game, but I was certainly aware they were home, because when am I going to be in Cleveland again with the whole family? So
right.
I try to do it when you're there. And my kids have been to the Tropicana Field a couple of times. So of course, the ballparks in Atlanta. So they've been to 4, and I have been to, the best as I can tell, 39 Major League ballparks in my lifetime. So number 40 would be Globe Life Field.
I'll go back to MLB stadiums in a second, but Graham, you've been to so many other parks that don't get a lot of attention. Can you think of a few that our listeners should visit if they get a chance?
At the minor league level, my favorite is Memphis. So I've seen games over 100 minor league ballparks. That's the best to me. There's a couple good ones out there that I haven't been to, or that I've been told are great. I've been to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and El Paso. So if I could get to 2 that are in the minor leagues, that's where I'd like to go. But Memphis is my favorite of the minor leagues. And having covered spring training for a long, long time, written books, and have a website dedicated to spring training by itself, I think the best stadium, the best ballpark for its league, its level, by far, compared to anything else, is Salt River Fields out in Scottsdale on the Indian Reservation out there. That ballpark is so far, it's 20 years ahead of any ballpark in spring training. It's just absolutely amazing. Just how the way it's as top notch as you can get. And I love going out there. There's, some of the ballparks that aren't minor league ballparks anymore. When you had the contraction of the minor leagues, was it last year or 2 years ago, 40 communities lost their minor league team. Burlington, Vermont, Centennial Field, which is over a century old, is no longer a minor league stadium. It's a summer collegiate league stadium, but that was really cool just to see ballparks that have been around for a long, long time in a place that I would never go to, Burlington, Vermont, otherwise. So that got me to go to a game up there. So I really enjoyed that. But I've gotten to the point where I enjoy even the bad ballparks I like, because they're all different. There's something positive for me to say about, all of them. And my goal is always to get to as many ballparks as I haven't been to. So, living in the Southeast, it's a lot easier to get to ballparks in this part of the country than it is like the Pacific Northwest. So that's, the places that I've generally missed are the ones that are furthest away. Locally here, that ballpark in Augusta, or North Augusta, South Carolina, that opened a few years ago it was a Giants affiliate then, but Braves affiliate now, is super nice for its level. So most of the ballparks nowadays are pretty good. I'm not a big fan of Gwinnett.
Yeah.
Over by you guys, not easy to get to. There's not that it factor for a new ballpark. It doesn't seem to have that. So we don't go there very often.
That park reminds me a lot. Did you go to Cashman Field in Vegas, where it's there, it's a thing, but that's about it?
Yeah, I've been to Cashman. I never saw a game there. I was there a couple of times on non-game days. And you're right. And I recognize that people that go to games in Gwinnett and have never been to, say, Memphis or Norfolk, Virginia, which I think is a great park, there's nothing to compare it to. When I was growing up, I thought Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh was great. Nobody told me it was bad. It was a place to go to watch the game.
They never told you it's exactly like the Vet or exactly like the Qualcomm, Jack Murphy Stadium, whatever.
No. So that commentary didn't exist back then. So I didn't know how bad it was. And then, of course, we moved away, and now they have PNC Park, which is my favorite ballpark that's not Fenway Park. So
right.
But again, I thought they could have done a lot more with Gwinnett. I wish it was more like Augusta or somewhere else. And then some ballparks are exactly the same. The ballpark in Rome, Georgia was a duplicate of the one in Lexington, Kentucky. It's the exact same thing, designed by the same people, built by the same firm, open up within, a couple of years of each other or a few years of each other. It's literally, the same exact ballpark. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't traveled around so much. But the old ballpark in Greenville, South Carolina, that's not used anymore. It was an exact duplicate of what's in Colorado Springs. So sometimes you start to pick up on these things when you see enough of them. But, for me, if a community has a ballpark, that's always a good thing. So
when you go to a baseball stadium, how much of the game do you watch, and how much time are you spending seeing everything the park has to offer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if it's whenever I go to Texas, I won't go to just one game. I'll go for a couple of games. And that way allows me to be able to watch the game and see as much of the ballpark as I can. So I'll get there early. If the gates open 2 hours before game time, I'll get there 2 hours before game time, and I'll stay until I have to go. And that gives me a chance to see everything. And, I still enjoy watching the game at the major league level because I know who the players are, right? If I'm going to a game and going up to Rome, Georgia, I don't know who anybody is except for maybe one player. And I don't really care who wins or who loses. And in those instances, especially the minor league level, I'm just going mainly to see the stadium. That's why I'm there. It's not that I don't enjoy baseball, but I've seen a lot of baseball games in my life. And if I'm in Pulaski, Virginia, or, someplace in California that I've never been to see a game like Stockton, I'm more interested in the ballpark than I am the game at that point in time. But the major league level, just because I'm a fan, I know who the players are, I do enjoy watching the game, but I want to see as much as I can of the ballpark. And so if I'm going to a major league park for the first time, I'm usually going to try to be there for 2 or 3 days. So I know the first time, in fact, the only time I've ever been to Detroit, I saw a 3-game series with the Red Sox. Toronto was an exception. I know you guys are going there, but it was the last weekend of the season many years ago. And I had to get back for my grandma's birthday at the time, and she was nearing 100. So I only had a day to do Toronto, and would like to stay for a couple of days there. It's one of the few places I've been where I only spent about 24 hours there. So that most ballparks I've been to multiple times. At the major league level, I do like to watch the game. At the minor league level and the spring training level, I'm mainly there to see as much of the ballpark as I can and take as many different photos. And then part of the thing is just fun talking to baseball fans, because we're not the only one that's there to see a game at a different ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
You won't run into many people in Toronto with Tampa Bay Rays gear on, but you will run into some.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a fraternity of fans wherever you go.
Right.
So, and depending on the hat you wear, sometimes people, Gracie, you've got an interesting hat on. I can't quite see what that is,
It's
but
my team's hat, GBA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's my
So
travel team.
travel team. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've got a couple of hats. One of my sons plays on a travel team here, and it's the Sharks is what we're called. So, but see, that's interesting. So it's a logo I've never seen. So I'd be curious of what that was if I didn't know. So, but yeah, you'll be surprised the people you meet up there that are Rays fans, and you'll start up a conversation with some of them. And that's what makes baseball great. There's a lot of downtime in baseball between pitches, between innings, to walk around, to talk to people, to do things like that. And it's a good paced sport for people that like to, take it all in, as opposed to maybe football where it's just constant action, or basketball. So that's a big part of it is talking and meeting the different people at the ballpark that, share your same passion. So that's what's so cool. And people in Toronto or wherever you're going to go know far more about the stadium and the locality than you do. And so if I want to know something about something, I will ask an usher or somebody else there that seems knowledgeable. And most of the things that I discovered and found out about are from fellow fans or maybe people that work at the stadium. It's not discovering on my own. Toronto's a big stadium. So I don't know how long you guys are going to be there, but it would take days to see everything that's there. So, people that are the local fans will tip you off to things to pay attention to, things you don't want to miss, parts of the stadium that you want to see. And it's kind of really neat discovering things that way. I don't do a lot of research on any ballpark before I get there because I want to have a first impression and not have that made, for me. If there were reviews of the stadiums from 30 years ago, when I was going to games in Pittsburgh, I would say, Dad, I don't want to go see the Pirates. The stadium's horrible, so I don't want that to poison what I'm thinking to know something about a ballpark before I get there. But that's just me. So.
Just like you said, my dad likes to get everywhere like 2 hours early. So it's like a no-brainer. We get to the ballpark early too.
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna see or who you might meet.
Or where you're gonna go.
Yeah, I think I probably told Graham the story. I might have told you the story before. Like the very PG version of it is that, going to Dodger Stadium my very first time, which by the way is a much better ballpark than it appears on television. Like I really like Dodger Stadium. I ended up meeting the head chef for the executive chef, just because I was taking notes at one of the concession stands way early, like right when you can get in. And then just speeding along the story, he ends up taking me on a tour of the stadium. And eventually I got to meet Tommy Lasorda. And there's another story to that, but it was what a thrill that I got to meet Tommy Lasorda.
I've got a Tommy Lasorda story as well. That's not PG rated either. I think you get enough games, you'll have a Lasorda story.
So I think we've covered it all. So let's end with a few rapid fire questions. You guys ready?
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yes.
we were before that though. We were writing some stuff down. We were talking about. I was telling Grayson how on your website and on your Facebook, you are the know. Like you're always on top of what is going on with stadiums, and obviously in Tampa, which we love the Rays. There's been this battle, right, with between the Rays, the city of St. Petersburg, and then like the big brother pull of Tampa Bay. Come on, come over here. Do you think that, I think 2027 is when the lease is up?
Yes.
How do you think this shakes out? Do you think the Rays stay in the Bay Area there, or do you think baseball ends here in 4 years for the Tampa fans?
They tried that weird scenario where they were going to play half the season in Montreal and half the season somewhere in Florida, which was never going to happen. Nobody was going to vote on that. You would have players having to pay taxes in 2 different jurisdictions. The travel was difficult. That plan never made any sense to me. The way that it's going to play out, unless something changes, they're going to be playing in Tropicana Field 2028, 2029. They'll just keep on renewing the lease for a year or two at a time. As of today, now something could obviously change. I don't know where else they're going to go, because communities aren't exactly throwing around a lot of money to build ballparks or, $1 billion stadiums coming off the pandemic and, less tax revenues and things of that sort. And there just aren't that many places in the United States where a team can move to right now.
So I'm gonna disagree slightly. I think that baseball stays in Tampa, and I think they're going to end up over in the Ybor City area. And the reason why is the Nashville Stars, which back in the day was a Negro League team. It was announced yesterday that former Major League player Dave Stewart he's leading a group, a minority group that is trying to bring MLB baseball to Nashville. And according to the article I read, it said that the first priority for Major League Baseball is to figure out future homes of both Oakland and Tampa.
Yes.
And until that happens, the Nashville Stars will not exist in Nashville. I think it's in all of the owners' best interest to figure out that first step, figure out new homes for Tampa and Oakland, so that there can be an expansion, and then all the owners, get rich off that as well.
That's what it's all about. And you're right, until the Oakland and Tampa Bay stadium situations or franchise situations are figured out, there will be no expansion.
Yeah.
Because they need that for leverage. You have to have the opportunity in Montreal or Nashville before you can potentially expand. I don't know. I think that they will stay in Tampa, but the situation in Miami did not help the Rays. The debacle that stadium was in building it, how they financed it, what the Marlins didn't contribute, and how unsuccessful that has been getting fans into the ballpark or that area is not going to help the Tampa Bay Rays. So they're going to have to put some skin in the game, which the Marlins did not do.
Right.
I love that area so much. It would be hard to not have Major League Baseball there. It seems like it should work, but I don't know that putting up a nice ballpark in Ybor City is going to draw a lot more fans. I mean, it'll be more than, of course, Tropicana Field, but I don't know, as successful as that team is on the field, and as they have been since they have not been the Devil Rays. They were horrible as a Devil Rays. Once they became the Rays, they've always been, for the most part, very good. And you've got a lot of Red Sox, Yankees fans that go to those games when they play. It's hard to believe that more people don't go to those games. I know that they get good TV ratings, but I just can't see Tampa Bay leaving that market unless somebody comes in and builds them a stadium in Vegas. I don't see it happen in Charlotte or Nashville. Those minor league stadiums are fairly new. Nashville took a long time to build their minor league stadium. So, Montreal to me is the one place where a team could move to and relocate. I don't know there's anywhere else realistic that would happen prior to expansion. But I don't think anybody knows the answer to the Rays stadium situation. They've been trying to get a new stadium almost as long as they've been a franchise, going back to the early 2000s. And there's no easy answer to that because it's who's going to pay for it. If Tampa was willing to pay for it, or St. Pete, and they obviously wanted the Tampa side, there's no doubt about that, then that's where the team would end up for. But the only reason it hasn't happened yet is just nobody has is willing to put up the money to be able to do it. So, here in Atlanta, the Braves moved out of Atlanta itself proper to, Cobb County, because Cobb County was willing to spend a few $100 million to get the Braves to move, 15 miles to the north. There hasn't been that same willingness in Tampa to come up with the financial piece to move the team. They're certainly successful. And that generation of fans down there, that, the kids that were, 8, 9, 10 when the Rays first started winning, they're young adults now. So they should be Rays fans. It's fun to root for a winner. Tampa Bay has been a winner for 14, 15 years. They really should start to develop a fan base. And I think if they stay there another decade, as people in the 20s, 30s start to have kids, they'll be Rays fans, not Red Sox fans or Yankees fans. So that's what you have to do, to develop that fan base. So I think Tampa Bay's positioned perfectly to do that. I just don't know what's going to happen with the stadium. The Montreal-Tampa plan never made any sense to me at all. But I personally hope a team stays down there. So I enjoy going to games, but I don't think anybody knows the answer. And if you got somebody on for the Rays and they talk to you, I don't think they'd be lying to say we really don't know.
I think that's
going to
happen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows.
So now I think we've covered it all. So let's end with a few rapid fire questions. You guys ready?
Yes.
Sure.
Graham, this is for you. Do you think Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds belong in the Hall of Fame?
As long as, and I know some of your guests have said the same thing, as long as Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, I cannot put Clemens or Bonds in the Hall of Fame. I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, and then you could put Clemens and Bonds in maybe. Rose did not cheat to win. Clemens and Bonds cheated to give themselves and their teams an unfair advantage. So if you're going to keep Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame, I have no problem keeping Bonds and Clemens out of the Hall of Fame. Do they belong in there? For as talented as they were, of course so. But, they violated that rule of sportsmanship, and they weren't popular with their teammates anyway. So they did things they should not have done and are paying the price for that, which is kind of sad because they were truly gifted players. And the fact that you have to answer that question, and then, so many people are passionate one way or the other, just goes to show if you do things the wrong way for a long enough period of time as they did, it'll come back to bite you in your rear end. So I would say no, but they're eventually going to get in.
So both of you, if you could go to one ballpark tomorrow, which would you choose?
Let me go first. I love Fenway and I love Wrigley. Those two are just amazing. You kind of touched on it before. PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Graham, you and I have spoken about this many times. In fact, Graham and I actually were at a game together in the same weekend. Nice. It was against the Cardinals. And
yes,
the number one best backdrop in all of baseball. You're closer to the field at any place in PNC Park, even the second/third tier, because it doesn't have like that fourth tier like in Truist. You're closer to the playing field than anywhere else. It is an intimate feel. It's a beautiful city. You got the Clemente Bridge right there behind the batter's eye. You have, that Gotham Tower back there too. The fans are appreciative of baseball, those that show up. You have, there was a Negro League Hall of Fame, and I think the left field like alleyway, but they may have relocated it to Kansas City. Right? Do you remember like there was like that alleyway filled with like the Negro
There's
League?
a traveling exhibit. And I don't remember seeing it there, but there's certain traveling exhibits. It's a possibility that's there. So, because the left field rotunda is one of my favorite places to watch a game, stand to watch a game. And all
absolutely. And then if you're so inclined to hit a ball out of the park, just like at whatever they're calling it now, Pac Bell, AT&T Park, whatever it is.
It would land in the water.
It can land in the water. Yeah. I mean, I love that ballpark. My brother went to Carnegie Mellon. I almost went to either Carnegie Mellon, Pitt, or Duquesne. So I like Pittsburgh as a city. That's where I would go tomorrow if I could.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Now, when I was a kid, Grayson, your age, I lived in Pittsburgh. And I have seen a game there with your dad. I looked it up. It was 2011. So we were there in the summer of 2011. We saw a game there together. I would agree. It's just, it's a great ballpark, period. It's a fun place to spend a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Don't just do one game there. It's such an enjoyable place. So I would say PNC Park as well. If I could just pick one place, if I had to wake up tomorrow and go to one place, like I pick where I wanted to go, I would go to PNC Park as well, just for the ballpark itself.
Okay, so you can only buy one ballpark food. What is it?
When I was younger, it was a hot dog. Now I either get the souped up nachos or a barbecue sandwich.
Oh yeah.
And for you?
So some of the ballparks have
Baltimore's what? Boog's Powell?
It is Boog's. Yeah, Boog's barbecue.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia has Bull's barbecue. Greg Lazinski has been doing that as long as Citizens Bank Park has been open. So barbecue or nachos.
I know if anybody in Philly's listening, Tony Luke's, the cheese steak out in center field there. I think for me though, I'm going to go with it's just one item, right? Mm-hmm. Look, I'm a sucker for a soft pretzel. So now, I mean, there's so many stadiums that have like a signature thing. I forget what they're called. And at Citi Field, they have like those macaroni balls.
Yes.
There's the donuts in
2-foot hot dog.
2-foot hot dog and the donuts in at Target Field. But I'm a sucker for a soft pretzel.
I know the Braves are selling a $151 burger now. So
yeah,
I will not
or a $25,000 burger, which will get you a championship ring.
Mm-hmm. Fenway or Wrigley?
Fenway.
What's that? Are you biased?
I think I am. I just think it's a better ballpark. And I haven't been to Wrigley since they put all the, they modernized it by putting scoreboards everywhere and advertising everywhere and remove the bullpens from the field. Some of the neatest things about Wrigley was that old neighborhood feel. And that's changed a lot. So, the fact that the views, a lot of the rooftops are blocked now by these, mega boards, billboards and scoreboards. Not a fan of, but yeah, I think Fenway, I enjoy Fenway. It's such a small ballpark, and I like to sit in the upper deck at Fenway down the right field line or of the first base side. There's just something about the aesthetic of Fenway, just all the green. I'm entranced when I'm there. I enjoy Wrigley, but
it's amazing how small Fenway is. You're there and it's like
from home plate to left field, it's like 320, and then there's like
the dimensions
there's
are crazy,
like 20
right?
feet, there's like 20 feet of the green monster, and then it's just road and everything else.
It's there's nothing like it. For those two parks right there, but Fenway, I'm gonna go everything you just said. I mean, you nailed it. It's just there's nothing like Fenway Park.
Did you guys check out the Ted Williams seat when you were there, the red seat out in right field? Did you see that?
We did. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We got the full tour. We went to and so that was his first game was my second game there ever. And we went the next day as
We
well.
went for like 3 innings.
Oh yeah, because we had to get to the airport. But the tour that we went on at Fenway was awesome. The things that you learn about, I mean, obviously there's so much history involved with the whole franchise, but we had like a private tour, and learning about just the little nooks and crannies was pretty cool and special. And then we learned, I know Grayson talked about this when he interviewed the ladies. There's like a garden, but it's like their own farm. So they get like farm to table stuff that they grow right there, and it goes to the concessions or to their like diamond club. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's like a thing. The Giants have been doing that for a while in San Francisco. So I'd imagine a bunch of other ballparks are doing that, because I didn't know they were doing that at Fenway until I listened to that episode of the podcast. So that was something that I didn't know.
So I've already covered this question with my dad. So Graham, what is your favorite baseball movie?
Well, I am wearing the cap for it, if you can see it. The New York Knights were the team. The movie came out in 1984. It is The Natural, starring Robert Redford as Roy Hobbs. And there's a lot of adult leagues this day that go by Roy Hobbs League. So I enjoy that movie for the realism of it. It was filmed at the old minor league and actually NFL stadium in Buffalo, which some parts still stand. It was loosely based on a true story. Eddie Wakus was the name of the player that was actually shot, but it's just the way that it was filmed. It was so realistic, from the uniforms to everything in that movie was real, except for, the player and the New York Knights were the team. So that I enjoy Field of Dreams. It's a close second, but my favorite baseball movie is The Natural.
9th grade, Mr. Brannon, honors English. We did like 2 weeks on The Natural, where he compared it to Homer's Iliad and like Ulysses' journey, and just obviously the Kim Basinger role was like that siren, who was luring him. Everything about that movie, there's life lessons. He's seen it, Grayson's seen it, but he's several years away from like understanding like kind of the nuances and the subtext of it. You could watch that movie tomorrow and you're going to learn something, and maybe about yourself, certainly about the story. It is a phenomenally well done movie.
And they show it all the time in the off season on the MLB Network. So my kids have seen it as well. So that's, from everything from the stadium scenes to just how they do the actual baseball scenes. And it's, of course, it's a time period movie. So it was set from a while, back in the 50s or whatever. I just really enjoyed it. And it's one of those movies that they've never remade, and they probably never will, because how can you get better than that? And there's no sequel to it. We'd always wonder what happened to him after he played that last game.
Well, there's the book. So. It's a short novel by Bernard Malamud. It's and if you've read it, spoiler alert, it does. The ending of the movie is a lot more heroic than the end of the book. So.
Well, now I'm gonna have to read the book, because I don't even tell read the book.
You can read that book in one night.
Oh. And last question. This is also for Graham. Can you tell us about your emotions last year seeing the Braves win it all?
I didn't grow up a Braves fan, and I moved down here in the middle of 6th grade. I've always been a Red Sox fan, and I, had a tendency to root against the Braves the same way that I root against the Steelers, coming from Pittsburgh, because everybody was a Steelers fan. But near the end of the Turner Field lifespan, we started going to games, started taking my kids to games, started going to a lot more games. And so I finally became a Braves fan, or I wanted the Braves to do well. And so, that was a cool moment. My youngest son doesn't understand how hard it is to win a World Series as a fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. I had to wait till I was, 30 years old before they ended their 86-year dry spell. And so when he was watching last year, just after he turned 10 at midnight, he's staying up watching on the couch because the Braves are his team. Freddie Freeman was his favorite player. It was awesome for him to be able to experience, what I got to experience as a 30-year-old with Red Sox. So I was very excited the Braves won. I certainly didn't want the Astros to win. Had it been 10 years ago, I probably would have been rooting for the Astros, but because the Braves are our hometown team, and that's who at least one of my kids follows, I was definitely happy that the Braves won. So, and then Georgia won the national championship of football. So the people around here are spoiled with so much success. Yeah, so much success that they didn't have for a long time. So I was definitely happy that I see. We were just in Gainesville, Florida about 2 weeks ago. So we did get to see the Swamp in person, coming back from spring training. But now I was happy the Braves won, and I was happy for Freddie Freeman. And there's so many true Braves fans around here. Growing up, the Braves are always on TBS. No matter where you live, you could watch the Braves when you're younger. And so I was happy that they won. And I wasn't jumping up and down celebrating happy, but it was a good warm feeling. I'd say the Braves are probably maybe my fourth favorite team now, Major League. So they moved up a lot over the past 6-7 years.
Okay, we did it. That was our second part about baseball ballparks, and hopefully our listeners are itching to see games this year in stadiums they have never been to. Did you guys have fun?
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
These talks are always fun. So yes, thanks so much for having me on, Grayson. This was fun.
Well, thank you again to my guests Graham Knight and my dad. If you want more information on all the ballparks, big and small, please visit baseballpilgrimages.com or follow Graham's Adventures on Instagram at baseballpilgrimages. And you can help my show by subscribing to Baseball Podcasts Are Fun on YouTube and Spotify, or following the show at Baseball Podcasts Are Fun on Instagram. I have no idea who my next guest will be, but if you're a ball player or no ball player, any age, getting paid to play or not, give us a shout out on Instagram. I'm always looking for fun new guests. Until then, I am Grayson Knight, and this was Baseball Podcasts Are Fun. Don't forget to swing for the fences. See ya.